The Pittsburgh Steelers got their guy yesterday. Aaron Rodgers signed a 1-year deal with the team. But on today's episode, we got to talk about it. Are the Steelers now playoff bound after the recent signing of Aaron Rodgers? Y'all know we're going to talk about it and break it down right after this.
Welcome to your number one spot for all NFL news and content, NFL Central.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back into another episode of NFL Central, your number one spot for everything NFL. I'm your host here, Bobby, and I'm holding it down for today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in with me today, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to the channel. But hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers, after playing that long waiting game, they finally get their guy in Aaron Rodgers going up there to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what was a move that was expected, but took longer than expected. So you give the Pittsburgh Steelers a little bit of credit for holding on strong and not necessarily having Mike Tomlin going into his locker room and saying, "Hey guys, we have to depend on Mason Rudolph or Will Howard to get us to the playoffs and potentially help us win a championship." In those quiet words that yeah, it was definitely a little challenging. And y'all know how I've been feeling about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they've handled this entire situation the entire time. And I just thought that it was just idiotic, just to say the least, and not to have really so much of a harsh word to use. But I felt like once chartered franchise, and I still think I still hold them in a high regard. I just felt like they was just, instead of being the main chick in the NFL per se, they moved on to being the side chick for a little while and was trying to mess up somebody's marriage. I'm just saying, what I'm saying, just for how the way I was looking at it. They was the gal on the block, the 10, the dime right there that you wanted to look at for how this franchise has been moving for a very, very long time. And then just to kind of lower their standards, it turned me off a little bit. So I was like, yeah, that's the side chick. I'm gonna move over here to the main chick. Just a little poor analogy to throw out there, but I hope y'all catch my drift. But are the Pittsburgh Steelers playoff bound after signing Aaron Rodgers? I would say there's a chance. I'm not going to sit there and cut them short simply because if you already know, if you're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're looking at Mike Tomlin and you're looking at how well Mike Tomlin has done throughout his coaching career. Yeah, not necessarily having a losing season is a hell of a feat to have on your resume, a hell of a bullet to have on that resume that you can move forward with and be like, hey, I'm one of those guys that has embodied a winning culture. I'm one of those guys that has, continuously tried to compete at the highest level. But then when we get into the weeds of everything, it's always came down to, okay, no losing seasons, but how many times are you going to continuously enter the playoffs and lose football games? Now, I'm not saying that the signing of Aaron Rodgers was 100% bad, but I wanted to know where was the Pittsburgh Steelers mindset after understanding this guy's 41 years old, just signed a 1-year deal, and you're pretty much going to be back on square one next season unless you feel like Will Howard, if he sits behind Aaron Rodgers, learns the system, get acclimated with the way that the NFL is, get acclimated with the culture, and then you can officially hand over the keys to him, and you see how that all works out for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their franchise. But I don't have too much hope in that idea right now. I don't know what Will Howard can be in this NFL. I'm not saying he can't come out and be one of the best quarterbacks or be a top quarterback in this league. It's just that right now, I don't have that thought in my mind. I'm looking at Will Howard as a guy that could potentially go out there and be a starter. But there's, on the flip side, I think that the chances are that Will Howard could potentially be a career backup if I'm just looking at it from the outside looking in. But I will throw this in there and say that it's actually a good thing that you don't have to start Will Howard right away. You can allow him to just learn from a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And despite how we feel about him, he has had one of the best careers in the NFL. And whether you rank him as one of the top guys or not, he still had a sustainable career to where he's lasted many years and has success and being a multiple time MVP and a Super Bowl champion. So you give a lot of love to that. But then you got to come and look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, hey, but Aaron Rodgers has been a little bit mid these past few seasons. In fact, last season with the in fact, this past season with the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers, it was okay, but it was definitely bad. The way that it all worked out, it was a sad thing to see from the New York Giants, who had a lot Jets, excuse me, the New York Jets, who had a lot of aspirations on making it to the playoffs, and they didn't make the playoffs. And I know that Aaron Rodgers' stats look all right, but it was just like, bro, we had higher expectations when Aaron Rodgers inserted himself into a New York Jets uniform. Now, when you talk about the stats last year, they look decent. 63% completion percentage, 28 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and about a little over 3,800 yards. So it's not necessarily a bad statistical season for Aaron Rodgers, but it was a bad season in regards to the way that it all panned out, in the way that the New York Jets didn't even come close to winning many games or even making it to the playoffs. So that's what I'm coming here and to talk about right now in regards to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I will give them a shot. I do know that that defense led by TJ Watt, they're going to be well coached. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, to their own fault, drafted a bunch of young defensive players that they can insert on this defense again. Now you look at the offensive weapons and you say, hey, can DK Metcalf help us get there? He is a legit number one. So you say, okay, cool, check. We got a number one. Then they went out and drafted a running back in Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, who I wasn't necessarily high on as a draft prospect, but I can come to terms and understand that Caleb Johnson is a good running back. It's just that for my team that I root for, I wasn't a huge fan for him, but I think that he can give the Pittsburgh Steelers what they expect out of him. I really believe in that. And then they got guys that can come out of the slot in like a Calvin Austin. Then they got a veteran wide receiver in Robert Woods. And then they got my man's Pat Fryermouth coming out as a tight end. I think those are some feasible weapons to work around with. I think those are adequate weapons to work around with, but I don't necessarily believe that it's enough to compete in the AFC North or the AFC Conference. Just me personally. I'm looking at the AFC West, and I expect 3 teams to come out of that division to compete for a playoff spot. You talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Denver Broncos, and the Chargers. If you look at your own division in the AFC North, I have the Bengals and the Ravens above them. That's already 5 teams. You know what I'm saying? That we looking at when it comes to how the playoffs could potentially shape up and pan out. And then that only leaves the other 2 divisions where you expect in the AFC East the Bills to take on that. And then in the AFC South, maybe one team in the Houston Texans with a close possibility of having the Jacksonville Jaguars compete for that. It leaves the Steelers on the outside looking in. You know what I'm saying? Potentially, if we're shaping it up in that type of way. So can they? Yes. Will they? I'm not so confident in that. And this is going to be some pushback on that. And I understand it. And it's okay. Simply because I'm looking at many things. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't get this thing rolling in the right direction to start off the season, it could be a very long season for Pittsburgh fans. I have my concerns with Aaron Rodgers working closely with Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith was a guy that was really, and it could be a good thing for Aaron Rodgers. He calls the play. He wants you to run the play, not to do many audibles out of that play. That was being reported that why he was so frustrated with Russell Wilson this season, because Russell Wilson was like to change plays. Aaron Rodgers is a guy that's not going to change many plays, but if Arthur Smith calls the play, we'll see if Aaron Rodgers sticks with it, or are you going to lean on Aaron Rodgers and his expertise in his mind to say, hey, we're going to change this play instead of going to, for these slants. I see a one-on-one matchup with DK Metcalf that could possibly be there for me. We're going to call this audible, and DK Metcalf, I need you to go up the field, and I'm going to try to give you this rock. How is that going to pan over with Arthur Smith? Aaron Rodgers doesn't like to run a lot of motion in his offense while he's being the quarterback. We've seen some motion come out of that offense in Pittsburgh. And how is that relationship going to work out? That's why I'm kind of just looking at it early on and just like, bruh, I don't necessarily know right now. And I think that everybody understands that it is very, very early in the season, quote unquote, to even come to that determination. But I'm looking at this schedule as well. The schedule for the Pittsburgh Steelers is not a cakewalk, bro. It's not a cakewalk. You kick your season off by going against the Jets, the Seahawks, the Patriots, the Vikings. Cool. Then you got some divisional matchups, which is going to be very, very tough for them. Your Green Bay Packers, your Colts. But then from November until the end of the season, it's going to be a gauntlet for the Steelers. Can Aaron Rodgers rise up to the occasion will be the number one question that people are going to be asking. For that seat, from November 9th through the rest of the season, here's their matchups. You have the Chargers, the Bengals, the Bears, who many believe may be, taking a step forward, but it's too early to come to that determination. We shall see. Then the Bills, then the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Lions, the Browns, the Ravens. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I understand strong defense, but a lot of these teams you're going to be going against is going to have some decent defenses or better defenses or be on par defensively with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're talking about the Ravens. You're talking about the Bills. You're expecting the Bears to have a solid defense because these past two seasons, though the quarterback play in Chicago has not been the best, the defense has been there and they have added on to their defense. And the Chargers, they're going to play tough ball over there, whether it's in Pittsburgh or whether it's in LA. Jim Harbaugh, is going to have his team ready to go. And you just going against some of the best quarterbacks that's in the league through this stretch. You mean to tell me Aaron Rodgers versus Justin Herbert ain't going to be a game to watch? Aaron Rodgers versus Joe Burrow? Aaron Rodgers versus Josh Allen? Aaron Rodgers versus Lamar Jackson, which the Pittsburgh Steelers compete well against Lamar Jackson. But again, still some of the best quarterbacks that they're going to be seeing through that stretch, along with some teams that are going to be tough to beat. But it is the NFL. And if you really like that, go beat the team. I'm saying there is a chance, but I'm not 100% confident that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be making the playoffs this season. That's just me. So we'll see. I think it was, like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing that they was able to pick up Aaron Rodgers. I just don't necessarily think that this moves the needle well enough to where people can come out and just start saying they're going to the playoffs. They're going to have a deep playoff run like people have done for the last 5 seasons when Aaron Rodgers has been with Green Bay and when he moved on to the Jets and now moving on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If anybody is sitting here looking me in my face today and coming to me and saying the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to the Super Bowl, I'm calling your boss to drug test you. Yes, you need some serious help. Not even gonna lie to you, brother. For real, my brother, my sister, you need some serious help. I don't see these guys as a Super Bowl team, but could very well be a playoff team. But I think a lot of things have to go their way, especially in a lot of these games. Mike Tomlin's going to have that defense ready, but is Aaron Rodgers going to be able to make the plays necessary to win the games? I need to see it. I need to see it. He finished the second half when the season was pretty much over for the Jets. You saw a better version of Aaron Rodgers. But we know if you want to go ahead and give yourself a chance to get into that playoffs, you got to have consistency throughout the entire seasons, even in losses. Even in losses, you got to be consistent throughout the NFL season. Some teams, they start off bad, then they get hot. But the way that this division is in the AFC North, you can't start off bad and then hopefully get hot and hope that some other team fall off. You have to have a consistent basis on that you can work with to say, hey, and it starts with the division. You got to go at least 3-3 within your division. At least 3-3 within your division versus some of those other AFC North teams, because Baltimore, they coming in with a chip on their shoulder after, having some success in the playoffs and then losing, and then they re-up on a lot of their players. The Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow has been ticked off about not making the playoffs the last 2 seasons, and he's ready to go. And then the Cleveland Browns, look, I don't know what the quarterback situation is looking like, but they got some talent around that team. And then Kevin Stefanski, his idea is building this team out and being a run-first team again, and you go and get Quinshon Judkins and my man Dylan Sampson, 2 young running backs who ain't got nothing else to lose and nothing else to do but run the rock hard, and getting back to that 2020, 2021 system that had Kareem Hunt at 800 yards, and then you had Chubb at over 1,100 yards, I believe it was, or close to it. Yeah, that's going to be a tough team to beat in that division. Divisional matchups are always tough anyway. But hey, let me know how y'all feeling about all things discussed today, man. Do you believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers will make the playoffs this season? I'm putting it on wax. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers make the playoffs this season. Just my personal opinion. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But right now, I'm making my prediction to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers will not make the playoffs this season. I put it on wax. Now it's time for you to put it on wax. Let me know your thoughts and everything down below on that. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode. Make sure before you get up out of here, you hit that like button, you subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. I appreciate y'all, man. Thank y'all so much. Always love football, and y'all already know. I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure.